welcome to another episode of GoalHornsandFightSongs. I'm your host, Wes, on Twitter at Painted Bronco. Joining me once again, as always, is my co-host, Mike, at Morrow04 on the Twitters. How was your week, Mike?
Mine was pretty good. Do you have a good 4th of July?
It was good. I cared more about the 2nd of July than the 4th of July. There was fireworks going on since last Wednesday, so I'm kind of over the whole explosions in the air thing.
Yeah, I was definitely hearing them, but got a little golfing done. I almost went full. We were just talking about Pat McAfee. I almost went full Pat. Did a little golfing, did some grilling, hung out with the dogs. It was a nice, relaxing weekend.
Yeah, I went and saw 3 Ice up in Grand Rapids, and that'll be our first topic of the show. But it was a good time. It was definitely fun.
Hockey in July. That hockey anytime is great, but you never thought you would hear hockey in July.
No, that's true. But
Well, unless it's the Beauty League in Minnesota, which is another thing I will have to go to, and we can talk about that at a later date.
But for sure, like if you haven't checked out 3 Ice yet, it's definitely worth a view. It is essentially Three's Eliminator from EASHL in real life, and it is 3 hours of fun, like legit. Like 6 games being played. Each team is 6 skaters and a goalie. 2 16-minute periods. All all penalties result in a penalty shot. No 4-on-3 power plays. It's fun, dude. And I don't know if you looked at any of the highlights yet, but there was a unreal goal scored on one of the power plays. I think it was in the second round.
No, and I haven't looked at the highlights, and I was telling you this earlier. I was really upset. I thought it was happening on Sunday, so I completely ignored that you were there on Saturday, and then I looked for it on Sunday, and I realized once I actually looked it up, I was a day off.
It even made the top play on SportsCenter this weekend. So, like that goal was just stupid. Again, if you haven't checked it out, check it out. There's some. I was looking through it, and 76% of the players in that league either went to an American college or a Canadian college. So it does still kind of relate to us talking about college hockey. Some guys on there that went to NCHC schools. Murph's team has a couple guys who went to Western on it and played in the NCHC in Colton Hargrove and Griffin Molino. They didn't necessarily have the best weekend this weekend. They got eliminated in the first round of games, but it's always good to see Broncos on the ice no matter where it is, and getting paid to play is pretty cool. Kevin Fitzgerald has done a really good job of making his name known in this league, playing for Team Mullen. They won the first 2 weeks, did not win this last weekend. That went to Team Trottier, being the first team besides Mullins to win a weekend, so that was pretty cool. And Seamus Donahue was the other one that I know played most recently at St. Cloud. But there's dudes from all over, a couple of Michigan guys who played for UMich in the last few years, or at least in their career at some point. A couple guys from Michigan Tech scattered in there. We got Denver represented a couple times, I believe. But yeah, so I mean, it's definitely it's a league worth looking at, giving a look to, and all the games that I know I'm pretty sure all the events are on CBS Sports. At least they have been so far in the United States. They've got it playing on quite a few different networks around the world, I believe, and trying to build it up and make it something fun and exciting, and potentially give guys an opportunity for a second look. And more hockey is great hockey, so.
And this is a league that you found out about, and you turned us on to it. I will say, you notice how there's no UMD guys on any rosters. It's because they all move on. But it is great, especially for these guys. Donahue, he's a guy that his name resonates with me, especially from the last couple of years in UMD having such close series with St. Cloud, and then Fitzgerald. He was another big name for St. Cloud that just I think teams probably missed out on. They decided to pass up on him, and now he's getting a chance to showcase his skills.
I think he did sign. I want to say Fitzgerald signed with an ECHL team, maybe at the end of the season, or he got a amateur tryout with an AHL team, and then kind of like they didn't play in the playoffs. I don't think so. He just kind of jumped right in, and actually, one of the guys where'd he go? I just saw his name and it reminded me. Not a college guy, but there's a guy who was playing. I believe he played last year for an ECHL team, and he came over and played in this league, and he's going back to that ECHL team in the fall. So some guys kind of using it as a off-season training almost to keep up with the game and be ready for the speed that comes with pro hockey in the fall. But it's a lot of fun, and I hope it continues to grow and it becomes a mainstay, kind of similar to what I think. It kind of reminds me maybe a little bit of Big Three, the basketball league that Ice Cube's a part of and runs and helps out with and does whatever he does for that.
I think the big difference between those two leagues, though, is these are guys that are using it to either get in shape or get their name back out there again, where the Big Three, you get a lot of older players that have retired from the NBA or played overseas, that it's not quite as fun. So I think it's going to be a good feeder league for teams to get another look at some guys and see what they can do, especially in open space, which does happen in the NHL and any of the pro leagues, especially in overtime.
Yeah, I mean, there's no like clean checking allowed in this, or like open ice checking, but there's definitely a lot of battles that take place, and it does become a physical thing, and it's fun though, dude. It's not grandpa's hockey. Let's put it that way. I mean, guys, but at the same time, like it's starting to get every weekend. It's gotten a little bit better and a little bit better. Like guys are kind of figuring out how to play and the pace of the game and how to prepare for 3 games in a single day kind of thing. But also, you're starting to see like there was a little bit of an opportunity for guys to kind of start scrapping a little bit in one of the games, and things got a little bit chippier than I think they wanted them to. But I mean, that's when you're playing the same group of people week in and week out. I think we're going to start seeing the development of some rivalries and things of that nature. But it's fun though, 100% fun.
In a sport, especially like hockey, you definitely, with how physical it is, you're gonna start hating guys. Somebody's gonna do something that you don't like, and then you're gonna retaliate, and they're not gonna like it. So that makes it fun. And then to have hockey all year round. Right now, we're kind of in sports purgatory, where you and I both enjoy baseball, but that's kind of the only thing going on.
Yeah, dude, there was a goalie who made, I want to say like 5 saves without a stick and just couldn't get enough coverage on the puck to get the area cleared out. So he's just trying to battle and his stick's like under him and he can't quite get hands back on it, but stopped everything, and I don't think they gave up a power play or a penalty. And finally he's able to grab the puck and cover it up a little bit. So the rules take a minute to get used to and to understand, but once you start getting in the flow of it, like it's cool freaking hockey. It's a neat idea. They're executing it very well. They're definitely improving from week to week. Like it's becoming a better product every week, and the style of play is increased every week. And like I said, I just hope that it gets to be one of those things that you start looking forward to before the draft coming up here, or in that in between period between the Stanley Cup ending and the regular season starting. So,
and one thing that you did say too is 76% of the players have played college at either in Canada or the United States. So especially probably the majority that have played college have played in the United States. That's good hockey. It's not like it's a bunch of beer leaguers and washed up players like what's that one league in Quebec that all they do is fight. Like it's talented hockey. It's just maybe not quite at the level that you expect, but it's in. But my guess it's probably like AHL hockey
Those
in a
guys,
sense.
I think that's what some of the more experienced players have said. Like, there's some guys who've done some time in the NHL that have NHL experience or AHL experience that like just didn't quite make it to the to stick in the leagues. But there's guys from Europe, there's guys from all over the place, and some of those guys have said that like this speed wise, it's on par with a decent AHL team, a decent AHL game. It's the skills of these guys skating and stick handling and stuff is top tier for sure. And I think that might be a good thing where you're coming in guys like Fitzgerald, they're coming into pro hockey for their first full season of pro hockey. This might be a way for them to ease into picking up the speed as opposed to just seeing it at training camp or those first few preseason games and then having to figure it out from there. Like they're kind of getting eased into it a little bit, at least with seeing 3-on-3 and playing against some of these guys and the size of these guys. But I mean, they're sticking in there pretty well, and Fitzgerald's been one of the top scorers throughout the start of this league. So,
And I did mention it earlier, but it's definitely a difference between, and I haven't really seen anything of the three ice, but there's the Beauty League, so it's DA Beauty League, and they play it in Edina, and there's NHLers that go in. It's kind of a way to get in shape, stay in shape, but it's not that competitive hockey that these guys are playing. Thomas Vanek played in it, and good old 3 strides and glide. I saw him actually take 5 hard strides a few years ago, and then he looked up and realized, "What am I doing? That's more strides than I need to take." So
put the brakes on.
There is a different level where the Beauty League is kind of them just playing, having fun, showing off for the fans.
No, this is
and the three ice, it's getting guys eyes on them. It's getting them opportunities.
This is legit competitive hockey. They're playing for big money prizes. Like it's not a joke for sure. And these guys are taking it seriously. Like you can tell the way they play. But yeah, if you get the opportunity to catch it on CBS Sports Network, definitely do it. If it's coming to a town near you, tickets aren't very expensive. Unfortunately, like for the league itself, the stadiums are not sold out or selling out by any means. So there's definitely going to be tickets available. I think this weekend they're in Hershey, Pennsylvania. So if you're in that area and you happen to see this before the weekend of July 9th, go for sure. You'll enjoy it. If you enjoy hockey and you're thrilled or you're happy when it gets to overtime and you like seeing space and speed and the potential for dirty dangles on breakaways, like it's something worth watching. And if you're a fan of goalies, like these goalies have to play pretty well, and they're standing on their heads from time to time.
And I just will say I'm very disappointed in this league that they do not have a date in Minnesota. They would probably sell out because we are a hockey starved state. When there is no hockey, we want hockey, especially because our team can't make it out of the first round in the NHL. But that's a completely different story. So I think maybe next year, if anybody from the Three Ice listens to this, come to Minnesota. People will show up. I definitely will show up.
So here's the rest of their schedule. Hershey, PA, the 9th. London, Ontario, the 16th. Pittsburgh, PA, the 23rd. Quebec City, the 30th. Nashville, Tennessee, the 6th. And their season championship will be back in Vegas August 20th.
I wish they were in Pittsburgh just a few days earlier because I am going to be out on the East Coast, and I would definitely make a detour, and I would force my parents to to go watch hockey.
Yeah, Pittsburgh the 23rd. But it's definitely a good time and worth a watch. But on that note, we're going to jump over to our main topic of the episode. We're going to talk about some Miami Red Hawk hockey. and what their schedule looks like for the upcoming 22-23 season. Dear God, it's already 2022-2023.
I
Gross.
know. Well, the fact that it's already July, I mean, I'm excited, but also what happened to the other 6 months we that went on? Like the first half of 2022 is completely gone.
Oh,
And I was thinking about that this weekend. Wait, it's already the 4th of July. What happened? I'm not. And they always say time goes faster as you get older, but I'm only 30. It shouldn't be going this fast already.
nah, time is definitely flying for sure. But yeah, let's jump into it. Let me just switch over to here. Here we go. You can see the schedule on the screen now for those watching, following along at home. Ferris will open its season against former CCHA opponent in the Ferris State Bulldogs. Back in the CCHA, the old CCHA days, this was a formidable opponent. They were a good team. They cracked the top 10 a couple times. I think at one point they were literally the number one team in the country. Made a Final Four appearance. Not so much the last couple of years though. They finished 7th in the CCHA last year. Were eliminated in the first round. But they did have the CCHA Rookie of the Year in Bradley Mark. So, it is a team with some talented guys. We'll see how they kind of come together and what they can do starting here in the non-conference schedule. And this will be a Saturday-Sunday series. We're seeing a lot of these Saturday-Sunday series to start the season this year.
And they're familiar opponents because they did play last year. There was a split between Miami and Ferris. I think Ferris was an 11-win team, so they weren't super strong, as you said, finishing 7th. But I think it's a good start for both teams because Miami wasn't a super strong team either, and just a good competitive series for them to get their legs underneath them, kind of see where they're at, feel each other out. And then they do know each other from last year. Not, I'm not sure how much turnover they have, but at least some guys know each other, so they can get their legs under them and kind of get ready for the year.
And I believe they were. What kind is Bowling Green in the WCHA also, or no?
Yes.
Okay, so they might have. I mean, their coach knows Ferris too because he's coached. He coached in Bowling Green before coming over to Miami. So definitely familiar. Like there's some familiarity between these two programs, but after that they are away at UMass Lowell, who was actually a pretty solid team last year. They finished 21-1-3. They're currently they finished the season
21-11-3.
That's right. I don't know why it says 1.
They only lost one game. My God.
That'd be impressive. But it would be one that mattered. They were tied with UMass for second in Hockey East. And they kind of struggled against some of the better teams, but were able to win games that they were supposed to win. So kind of what you want, but you do want to be able to take wins away from teams that are perceived as higher than you when you can. And they've ended up, unfortunately, having the draw of Denver in the first round of the NCAA tournament. And we know how that turned out because Denver went on to be the eventual champions last year.
And Lowell, I was actually a little bit surprised. I know they've had some good teams in the recent past, but as I was looking at their schedule, they swept number 19 BU, which no matter how BU's team is, sweeping BU is a big deal in college hockey with their history. And yeah, I was surprised to see their 21 wins because Lowell is kind of within the last 3-4 years, they've kind of been the little brother to UMass, especially when Cale Makar was at UMass. So that's going to be a tough test for Miami right off the bat. They get their feet under them with Ferris, a team that they know, and then all of a sudden, all right, here you go. Pretty top-tier opponent, NCAA tournament team with Lowell.
Yeah, and I don't know that it really gets any easier after that. I mean, granted, Canisius finished the season 16-16, so right at 500. 16-16-3 to be exact.
Mm-hmm.
But that's another team that's been able to make some deep runs. They failed to make the tournament last year. Finished second in the Atlantic, but lost to Mercyhurst in their quarterfinals there. They did lose a couple players, but they got some guys coming in, some experienced players. A couple from around the conferences. It seems like so. Another rebuilding team. I don't know too much about Canisius. I do know that, like I said, they have been pretty solid in years past, and they generally do an okay job of building back up and playing some decent hockey. And they'll be the home team, so it's always hard to win on the road.
And from what I know of Canisius, because I don't know a lot about them either, they always seem like they're a solid team, and you hear enough about them, and they might get in the bottom of the rankings. They're never really gonna push you too much in the sense of you have to worry about them, but you also do. So I'm kind of contradicting myself where they're a team that they can beat you on any given night, but you're also not like, oh my god, we have to play Canisius. But I think this is another good matchup for Miami, kind of where they're at, and just to build the camaraderie of the team.
That's what I was thinking. I was thinking they have a pretty solid non-conference schedule throughout the entire season, to start the year, and then they get that one series kind of in the second half of the season, winter breakish area that's also non-conference. It does seem like it's going to be some competitive hockey, and we'll see how Miami's grown since last season. They did struggle throughout the entire season, not just in the conference. So hopefully they can build up some momentum, but I mean, they did not schedule themselves very helpful, though. Very kindly, to say the least. They do open NCHC at home. However, it is against reigning defending, undisputed NCAA tournament champions.
All right, Paul Heyman, calm down.
In Denver. They're still the number one ranked team in the country. They finished last year 31-9-1. Really only, I think, one conference or one school had a better win-loss ratio than they did last year, or statistics, whatever you want to call them, last year. That being Minnesota State, but Denver's the one who won the championship. So, I mean, they're going to be tough. They're big-bodied. They did lose some underclassmen, but that's a team that seems to reload pretty well. They won all 6 meetings last year, because the 4 regular season plus 2 playoff games. And, they have a 2-1 win-loss ratio over Miami. They're 13-26, and Miami's 13-26-3 against Denver all time. So a team that they do struggle against. And I don't really see it being any easier this season for them.
No, the only thing that I can think of is actually, I may have mentioned it before, but I believe it was the Miami goalie. UMD actually struggled against Miami last year, and their goalie was phenomenal, and I do believe he's back. So he could be the backbone of any success that they have. There were a few, I know at least a couple games, UMD outshot them 50-something to 25
yeah,
and I think it was the last game of the season series, and it was like 53-26, and Miami won in overtime. And you run into a goalie like that, they can steal any game. It doesn't matter who you are. I just think it's going to be a really good test of what the team is now with another year under their belt and the new guys that they've brought in. What is his name? I'm looking at their roster right now. Where are their goalies?
I know they lost one goalie because one goalie's coming to Western. He did not play last year, though.
Where are your positions?
Boom, boom. But we can look at this real quick.
Person?
Here.
Maybe it was person.
I don't know. I don't remember.
As everyone can tell, we do a lot of prep for this. At least I do.
I do some.
I think it is person. That he was unbelievable in net for them.
I know there was they did. I mean, they played well, but they did struggle quite a bit throughout the entire season. They didn't win a game against Denver last year for sure. But Denver's also, like I said, they lost quite a few guys. They lost their leading point getter in Brink, but they do still have guys like Mazer who are coming. Who was a freshman last year. Made a pretty good name for himself as a freshman, so he's only going to get better as the years go on and become more of a leader in that system. So he's one to watch out for. Honestly, Denver could definitely sweep that series for sure.
They could. I just think, they might split it just because it is in Miami. Oxford. It is at Miami. They could do that. Okay, so let's see. Hang on. We're going to figure this out. Box score. The last game. They won their last game against UMD 4-0. I want penalty summary. I want individual.
You having fun over there?
I am.
Oof,
yeah,
Go ahead.
Ludwig Persson.
Yeah.
He had 44 saves in the shutout of UMD in their last game of the year. So, not Ludwig Kaiser, but he is kind of their X factor. He definitely did keep their team in games as I was watching it, and I was very, very impressed with what I saw against UMD because UMD was a high-powered team. Mm-hmm. They didn't show it in the NCHC, but my goodness, this guy, he impressed the hell out of me.
I mean, Miami's got the ability to put together some decent teams. They're not too far off of winning conference championships and making NCAA tournament runs and things of that nature. I mean, yeah, it kind of feels late now, but I think they were in the beginning of the NCHC. They were a top team too, and they just kind of seemed to start sliding a little bit. And they're still in the middle of a coaching. I think this will be their coach's third year with Miami, third or second. With Miami, and still kind of getting players that match his personality and setting the tone for what he wants that team to be, and really putting his stamp on it. But they come to Kalamazoo in the start of November, and they have a Bronco team to contend with.
And I think that their start of the conference schedule is going to be a real test for how they're going to show up for the rest of the year. As you just mentioned, they've always felt like a team that's 2 or 3 players away from being a really, really good team. And with them, they get their home series against Denver, but then the true test is going to be when they go to Western and Kalamazoo and facing the Lawson Lunatics. That's going to be where they're going to determine what type of team they are and how close they are, I think, and how they can handle adversity. I was just talking with my brother about this last night, me wanting to go there, and how excited I am to go to Kalamazoo to see the Lunatics myself, because you've built them up, and everybody that we've talked to says like bar down or bar none, not bar down. Um, hockey. Bar none, like the best atmosphere in college hockey because the lunatics are all across the ice. I think when you're a team trying to get together, yeah, you get a couple series, but going to Kalamazoo is going to figure out or is going to determine how the rest of your season is going to go.
Oh, 100%. And, Western does have a goalie coming in from Miami who I don't think played at all last year, but he'll be competing against, the other incoming goalies. And the one goalie from Wisconsin, Rowe, I believe is his name, who does have some experience of playing games last year. But the goalie coming in is Kirk, I want to say Larson? I don't know. People need to quit spelling things weird. Um, as far as last names go, I have no room to talk. My last name sucks. But so there's a guy who's familiar with the team. Knows a lot of the guys. Spent time with the guys from Miami. Might have some input into some stuff. But when we hear Western's coaching staff and players talk, we don't really pay attention too much to what they've done. We care more about what we can do with our players and what we do right and adjusting things that we did wrong. So, again, not that it makes much of a difference, but we will have a voice in the locker room that knows some of the guys on the Miami side and kind of their tendencies and things like that.
I think that does help Western going forward because when we were talking to Trevor, is um, I already forgot who it was, but they came down during a scrimmage and he just stopped playing because he knows I'm going glove side. Like you can help your other goalie out whether he plays or not. The only thing that I would say is the guy coming from Miami, there might be a little bit of nerves if he plays because you want to show up against your old team. You want to prove to them that hey, I should have been playing.
Yeah, for sure.
Not Ludwig over there, the Swede. Screw him. I'm the number one. Um, but we'll see if that happens. I just think it's going to be a really really tough test for Miami, and I can see Western sweeping that one.
I 100% could too. Even not really knowing what Western's going to have as far as skaters go, we did lose a lot of production this year in the off season, but we do have guys coming in that I'm kind of excited for. Knowing what they did in their previous leagues, there's guys who stepped up and showed that the team's going to be in good hands are some of our younger guys, the rookies and sophomore players that we had last year that stepped up in big roles and took over some games late and put us in a position to win some games and even stole some games for us. I think really the biggest question mark for Western is just going to be that crease. Who's going to step up and take on the number one spot? Who's going to try and fill in for Bussy not being there?
And that's the one area where I think Miami has the advantage with Person coming back, and knowing how good he is because he love Fanti, Bussy's solid. Like uh, Rennick was very good for St. Cloud. I cannot think of the guy's name from Denver. It's the best. Oh,
Magnus.
Magnus. Yeah, Magnus. Uh, all these goalies. Person is the guy that impressed me the most out of everyone. So I think that's the one disadvantage and the one advantage that Miami has going into that series is the crease, especially with Western not knowing who's going to be in net.
Yeah, and by that time the goalie will be figured out. He'll have potentially, hopefully, they'll be figured out and have a few games under him before taking on that rivalry game that Western versus Miami is. But then they go back home. They go back to their terrible state, their bottom southwest corner of their god awful state,
Hey,
to welcome in
don't
Colorado College.
don't put the whole state in there.
I'm from Michigan. The whole state is bad. Okay. And anyone from that state will say the whole of Michigan is bad. It's fine. It's a not so friendly rivalry between the two states.
I say the same thing about Wisconsin, so there's that.
When you almost go to war over a tiny strip of land known as Toledo, there's going to be some animosity left over.
Why would you want Toledo?
Go read a history book, okay? I'm not getting into this with you today. But they're home against Colorado College. Another team that struggled last year. So, again, this seems like a pretty fair matchup between the two. However, Colorado did sweep the 4-game series last year. And they do lead the all-time series, does Colorado. Colorado's got some, they lost a goalie too in Bass. I don't remember how to say
Bassy.
Yeah. Bassy. It was confusing as hell when these two teams played each other. For Western
I know English is hard for you.
It's, why do words have to be spelt differently and sound the same? It's stupid. English sucks. It's dumb language. Anyway, where were we? But yeah, this should be a pretty good matchup. I think Miami should be improved over last year. Colorado College could kind of go either way. They could hit another slump or they could start building up a little bit. I do expect Matt Vernon to be their starting goalie next season, with Bassey having left. So hopefully he can continue to grow as a goalie. I know he had some pretty good games last year and did some good things for that team. But they were 9-24-3 last year, so they have some room to grow here.
And I don't want to say it's a little bit of a reprieve because it's not in the NCHC, but in a sense it is for Miami. Again, not knowing what they're bringing in, and any of these teams that we talk about, we don't know what the team is going to look like a few weekends in. But just going off of last year, it's a little bit of a reprieve, a little bit of a team that's more on their level, and they get to go back home after having played Western and dealing with the Lunatics. They're going to go to their really nice arena, have their fans in front of them, sleep in their own beds, have kind of just a little bit of a more relaxing weekend. I think it's a good spot in the schedule to have CC for them. They've fought a little bit, having Denver and Western and Lowell in the first part of the season. Okay, now we have CC. We know CC. Yeah, they swept us last year, but they're going to be hungry because they only had 2 more wins than we did.
Yeah.
And we were in last place. We want to put them in last place. We want to go forward. So I think it's a good spot to have Colorado College, especially with how the rest of their schedule plays out.
Yeah, I mean, the week after that, they travel to Grand Forks and take on North Dakota, who finished the season ranked 9th. They lost to Notre Dame in the first round of the NCAA tournament. They were bumped by Western in the semifinals of the NCHC tournament. Still a team that went 24-14-1. Had a share of the Penrose Trophy for the 3rd consecutive season. They're a team that we kind of figured might struggle a little bit, but proved us wrong time in and time out. Miami constantly struggles against this team. They're on a 6-game losing streak against them. It's never too early to turn something around and pick up a couple wins of your own. Miami has the capability of shocking some teams, and if they can get on a roll and maybe steal one, pick up a win against Colorado, if not sweep that series, and maybe they can ride that momentum and turn up to Grand Forks and Ralph Engelstad, which is, as we've heard, an incredibly tough place to play too. But games can be stolen there, and it's been proven time in and time out. I mean, look at how Colorado went there last year, in the playoffs, and only lost both games by a goal apiece. They held them to 4 goals on that weekend, and really anytime you can do that to a Denver team, they're winnable games as long as you can score too. And unfortunately, Colorado just couldn't score enough. But they're going to be replacing. They're another team who's replacing a goalie. Granted, they're replacing a goalie with a Big Ten goalie, but a Big Ten goalie who struggled last year, who played on a lower team in the Big Ten at Michigan State.
And yeah, Big Ten goalie. I mean, not to discredit their ability, but it's the Big Ten. Let come on. Uh, but you went exactly to where my mind went, where you with Colorado College, games can be won there, especially because they get so hyped up, I think, and so overconfident. We're playing in front of our fans. We can't lose in Grand Forks. It's the only show in town. It's the only show for about Bemidji's maybe 3 hours, and that's even not really a show. Um, so maybe 5 6 hours. That is what they have. It's Alabama football to the fans of North Dakota. But Miami could go up there and steal one. It's not out of the realm of possibilities. It's just going to be really, really, really tough for them to do that. Um, Again, the questions in net, but I hate, I literally hate complimenting North Dakota. It, I feel like I'm going to throw up every time I do this, but Coach Barry, he has done a phenomenal job since Hackstall left there, and he gets his teams up every year. They always show up to play. They're always in the Penrose Cup conversation, if not, um, they're in the tournament. They're in the championship almost every year in the playoffs, other than last year. It seems like at least there there were a few. There have been a few times where they've lost, but that's just such a tough team and such a tough place to play, especially with how big their arena is too. And we heard Trevor talk about it. Um,
They're basically the 33rd NHL franchise as far as
yeah,
those people in North Dakota are concerned.
yeah, they are, and the amount of I I grew up 6 hours away from Grand Forks, and there were North Dakota fans. They are pretty much the 33rd NHL franchise. I would have put them at this as the 32nd, but then Seattle had to go and steal that. Like, you could put an NHL team there, and they would make money.
Oh, I
They
guarantee you that North Dakota does better attendance than Florida and Arizona.
well, especially Arizona, they have a bigger arena than Arizona's going to be playing.
You're not wrong.
uh,
I bet Arizona wishes they could just move to North Dakota and share Ralph Engelstad with North Dakota as opposed to that toy box they're sharing with Arizona State.
Oh, and they would sell that place out. They are hockey crazed, and they know the game, and they are relentless. They whenever, and you've seen it too at Lawson Arena.
Oh yeah, they travel.
Those fans, God, are they annoying? But
Yes.
they know what they're talking about most of the time.
Yeah.
Most of the time.
So after that, they'll go back home and take on who we were just talking about. You know, the goalie leaving from here to play at North Dakota. They play Michigan State. Once again, another CCHA opponent, or used to be former CCHA opponent back when during the old CCHA days before the NCHC was formed. Miami did get swept by Drew DeRider and Minnesota or Michigan State last season. Michigan State's made some changes. They went 12-23-1 last year. They switched out head coaches. They've got a lot of transfer movement, both coming and going. They've struggled a little bit in the last few years here with in the Big Ten, but you know they seem like they'll be a good opponent for Miami, where Miami's at right now.
I think so too. Um, it,
I think they're two winnable
I mean,
games for Miami.
yeah, and I think one of the things is Michigan State prides themselves. They don't quite have the history that Michigan does, but they pride themselves in their hockey history, especially wanting to be better than Michigan, or sorry, the school that shall not be named for you.
You can say it. I don't
Um,
care.
uh,
I lived in the state. I grew up a Michigan football fan.
but I do think, again, it's another little reprieve after a tough series, probably more so than Colorado College, just based off of how even they are in the NCHC. And then
They just start a little home streak here. They get 3 straight weekends at home. After
mhm,
state, they welcome St. Cloud State. Uh, St. Cloud, they lost. They had some goalie injuries at the end of last season. Maybe might have led to the UMD getting past them in the first round. Uh, might have been some of their struggle in the tournament. I mean, they didn't have the easiest draw in the NCAA tournament either. So,
mm-mm.
team that did make the tournament, they finished ranked 11th. They went 18, 15, and 4, so pretty close to that 500 mark. They finished 4th in the NCHC after a grueling series with UMD to fight for that home ice, which didn't really prove too helpful in the playoffs as they got swept by UMD. But again, like some of that might have been the goalie issue. Their goalie has since moved on to the pro ranks, but they do have Colorado College goalie coming in who has some experience playing against NCHC schools, so it's not like they're getting a blank slate at goaltender, and Bassey's going to compete for that starting job there in St. Cloud. They also have Dave Shayak on their bench, former Western Michigan coach who knows Miami really well, really solid coach. Took over a little bit last year as the head coach there in St. Cloud when their coach was, I think, coaching the Olympic team, I believe is where he went.
I don't know if Brent Larson was the Olympic team. Maybe he was.
It was either the Olympic team or the World Juniors.
I think it was the juniors.
I feel like it was the Olympic team because I feel like he was gone longer than the winter break. Because I know that Shayak definitely coached a couple weekends for sure. And the World Juniors got canceled pretty early on.
Oh yeah, they did. They did get canceled early. That's speaking of which, that's coming up. They're finishing that soon, I think.
Yeah, we can talk about that at the end of the show, Michael.
I know.
Keep
I just
rolling
got.
on.
I know. I'm sorry.
St. Cloud. I mean, they like I said, they were right at 500. They do kind of seem to. Dude, this was such a lopsided series last year, though. This was like I think they ended up outscoring them on the weekend 19-1. Did St. Cloud? The first game was like 11-1, I think, and then the game 2 was 8-0. So definitely some lopsided victories there for the Huskies. If they can get that goaltender under control, it might be a little bit closer this year and a little bit more experience, but it's probably more than likely going to be a season or a series sweep for St. Cloud. I just don't know that it's going to be that big of a blowout again.
And yeah, I don't know how big of a blowout it's going to be, but I do think St. Cloud's going to sweep, especially with they have Okabe and Zach Okabe coming back, Micah Miller coming back, and Brandon Bushy on defense coming back. Well, and all his grad students, or well, Okabe's a senior, but they have a big leadership group coming back for St. Cloud. And I did see Micah Miller play in high school, and he's been an instrumental part of that team going forward since he got to St. Cloud. I just think they're gonna really, really struggle against this St. Cloud team, and that's gonna be another good team going forward. And Brett Larson has done a great job since he's got there, making sure that St. Cloud is prepared every year and recruiting. I yeah, they get them. Miami gets them at home, but I don't really see it at all for them.
No, like I said,
So
it'll definitely depend on how well their goalie plays and how well that team has how much that team is able to mature since last season. And it's hard to beat teams like that 2 years in a row by that big of a margin. So I think there'll be closer games, but I do see it kind of leaning towards a sweep for St. Cloud, even at that point in the season. But they'll finish their long homestead here against Niagara. This will be, and they'll have a couple weeks in between St. Cloud and Niagara as we get into that winter break portion of the season. Niagara finished 8th of 10 in the Atlantic last season. They're a struggling program. They went 11, 22, and 3 last year. I want to say that I think they got swept by UND last year. Or did they split last year? I know this was one of the.
I think they did get swept. Yeah, they did get swept. And then I was just going to go back really quick to St. Cloud. Their goalie Castor. He was the one who came in for Rennick that when Rennick was out. I don't think he played bad. The team played bad in game 1, and then it was an overtime loss in game 2. So Rennick definitely could push Bassey for the number 1 spot. So St. Cloud has 2 good goalies. But Niagara in that series, they come out of the break with them. I think that's a good warm up, after a couple weeks off and everything. They did play North Dakota last year in the first series of the year, and they lost 6-2 and 4-0. They are a struggling team. They are, but you're always going to get that in college sports. There are the haves and the have-nots, and fortunately for us, there are a lot of haves in our conference.
Or unfortunately for us, there are a lot of haves in the conference.
Yeah, that is true. Unfortunately for our teams, but fortunately just for watching great hockey. 100%. But I do think it's good for Miami just to get their legs back under them, especially with how they end the season, because my God.
And I mean, it's the whole. I mean, really, you could say the whole second half of the season for them is just kind of a dash uphill. They start their second half of their season at Denver, going to what seems to be the peak of Mount Hockey, especially in the 2022 season, home of the Stanley Cup champions, home of the NCAA champions. Apparently some high school hockey program over there played extremely well and did something.
It's Colorado high school hockey. Screw them. They don't play in an NHL arena for their state tournament. So
I mean, all things hockey are kind of coming up Denver at the moment, and this series is probably going to come up Denver too. It's hard to play at that arena there and against that team. I mean, we saw it last year. And we've made this point. I think every schedule that we've done, we've made this point. They went undefeated until like February at home.
Mm-hmm.
And even then, I think they may have only lost that one game to UMD at home last year.
Yeah, they were unbelievable at home, and they've done it every single year from the WCHA into the NCHC. They're good, and you just I don't hate them, but I hate playing against them.
Yeah,
because they're just so good, and they never rebuild, they just reload. That's all that they do. And so you come out of Miami might be coming out of the Niagara series. Maybe they get a sweep, maybe they get a split, win the second game. They might be feeling pretty good. Hey, Happy New Year. You get to play Denver.
Yeah. However,
and go ahead.
No, go ahead. You.
Well, I was just gonna say, then it doesn't get any easier for them at all.
Yes and no. They get a little reprieve playing Omaha for the first time in the season. Omaha was one of the teams that actually struggled against Miami last year. Miami was able to pick up 3 out of 4 wins against Omaha. and they lead the all-time series as well. So I mean, it's a team that Miami has beaten before and proves capable of beating most years. Um, Miami finished 8th in the conference. Colorado was 7th. Omaha was 6th. They're a team that has its ups and downs for sure. They're missing quite a few pieces. They're another team with who's going to be relying on a new goalie, with Isaiah Seville leaving, and one of their more potently offensive players leaving as well. So they're a team kind of trying to put new pieces in places and build on guys and see what they can do in new roles. Winnable series for sure. If probably a split's most likely to happen between those two, but I wouldn't necessarily be 100% surprised if we see Miami coming out with a sweep on this one.
And I feel that Omaha is going to take that next step. So that's why I didn't really. That's why I didn't say it doesn't really get any easier for them. It's a little bit maybe of a reprieve for what they have coming up, but I do think Miami is, or Omaha is that team that they can make that next step. I don't think they were that far off of, maybe points wise, but watching them play, I don't think they were that far off of UMD for 5 or St. Cloud at 4. They could be a top 3 team if they really wanted to.
They were a question mark for me, considering what happened last year. Last year they had that real big long home series or home stand to start the year. They didn't necessarily have the toughest non-conference schedule. I think that their weaknesses were shown once they got into conference play a little bit more than they were. And like I said, they did lose some key pieces to that program. I don't necessarily know that they're going to take a step forward. I think Colorado and Miami might actually be able to gain on them a little bit more so than them gaining on UMD and St. Cloud. If we look at like where everybody finished last season, but I mean, time will tell, and we haven't really seen the new teams yet and how they play. So these are all just kind of our closest guesses.
Guesses is the key word there.
Yeah, our very uneducated guesses.
But yeah, I always feel like Omaha, they're that team that can finish a lot higher than they do, but missing key pieces and losing key pieces. You bring up a good point. It's very iffy, but at the same time, we say that every year about Omaha, and then it just feels like they could be a lot better than they are. They just don't follow through in expectations.
Yeah, but this is kind of where we get into the grinder part of the season for the unfortunate Red Hawks.
Hang on. We're gonna do this for them in the season, and we thought UMD had a brutal end of the season. I think Miami takes the cake.
Dude, they had a gauntlet of wind turbines here at the end of the season. Starting out, they are the home team this time, but they get the Fighting Hawks of North Dakota, and I mean, we already did kind of mention this team. They're extremely well coached. They play hard. They play well. Maybe Miami can steal one. Maybe North Dakota gets a little bit too far ahead of themselves, but I don't really see that being the case with the way that they're coached. And chances are they'll be looking to cement themselves as a top 3 team in the NCHC once again.
Yeah, I think North Dakota's, they kind of get locked in at this point. This is their time of year to get locked in, and pretty much anybody that plays them, if you're not a top tier team, you're screwed, to put it bluntly.
If you don't bring your best game, you're left. You might as well not even show up that weekend. Then they go up to St. Cloud, another team that again we've mentioned. There's familiarity amongst the coaching staff. There's familiarity amongst some players. I think these are players who've had transfers between them a few times in the brief history of the transfer portal. Could be another good series. It being at St. Cloud makes me tend to lean towards a St. Cloud sweep. They play on that big ice there, so a little bit more space. I think St. Cloud generally has some really quick guys who make the most out of that extra space on their ice, and it'll be difficult for Miami to kind of keep up with them, I think.
Yeah, I just think up in St. Cloud, it's a very weird building to play in. And the big ice definitely does help St. Cloud. They're built for that particular kind of game. Um, it doesn't show up in certain series, but it's also the talent level on the teams, and so it didn't help them in the playoffs last year against UMD, but against Miami probably will help them. So I can see a sweep for St. Cloud, and they're just going to be a good team in general again, looking at their roster.
And then they welcome Omaha to their home ice this time. And oddly enough, Miami, like I said, this is a team that Omaha does tend to struggle against, Miami being that team. Miami actually holds a winning record both in Oxford and Omaha. So a winnable series for Miami. It's just a matter of how that team comes together, how much they've matured since last season, putting together their game plan and playing the style of hockey they want to play, because they can play some good hockey for sure.
Oh yeah, for sure. And then the one that I have been waiting for is they get to travel up all the way to Duluth.
Yeah, they only play the Duluth Bulldogs once this season.
Probably good for them. Probably best for their record, even though if they would get them earlier in the year, they could probably steal at least one, if not two. But with that being their second to last series of the year, now is not the time that you want to play UMD.
No, this is where Minnesota starts getting their teeth bared in. They start figuring everything. They lock down a little bit more. They get in that defensive position, really, head down, teeth out. Saying that we're not stepping down to anybody. We're going to protect ours, and they'll take some points. But Miami was able to get 5 out of the 12 points they played for last year.
They did, and I watched every game that they had, and I just couldn't believe what was happening. But again, like we were talking about earlier, it was the goaltending. The UMD dominated every single game. It was just the goaltending with Persons that completely screwed us. It was unbelievable. He just won the duel. But yeah, in late in the season, especially second to last series, you do not want to play UMD, and that's St. Cloud's probably the only team, and they don't even want to play UMD at that point. But that's just who we play every year.
Yeah, it's that good rivalry. And then Miami will wrap up the season hosting the Western Michigan Broncos down there in Oxford, Ohio. It's
OHIO.
All right, calm down. This is that second. This is kind of that real rivalry weekend across the entire NCHC. These two teams know each other very well. They've spent a lot of time together in the same conference, going back to the CCHA days. They've competed for conference championships in the CCHA. They've competed hard against each other in the NCHC. It'll be interesting to see who can progress the most throughout the season. I think there's a lot of changes to both teams coming in this year. We've mentioned them earlier, so I don't necessarily need to go back through them all again. It's winnable for Western, for sure, but Miami could pull a little surprise, and they're going to get up for this game because it is a rivalry of teams, both in the fact that it's Western versus Miami. It's Ohio versus Michigan. There's a lot of like itty bitty things to this rivalry that has just taken place for a long time. I think I have somewhere. Yeah, this rivalry goes back to 1979.
And I think one of the interesting things that comes about with this last weekend is there's the rivalries, but then it's also
who's in
where
what
are you in the where are you in the standings, and can you get home ice advantage? Can you get another spot? So
can you spoil someone else's chances at a spot?
Yeah, going back to last year, do you want to face Denver or do you want to face Western? How are you going to go about it? Uh, and so that plays a lot into things as well. But that being said, with a rivalry like Western and Miami, the Michigan, Ohio, all that's out the door for everyone. We've developed a little bit of a rivalry with St. Cloud, but at the same time, other than my friends who are obnoxious St. Cloud fans, I really don't care. It's not like if it was North Dakota, yeah, I'm gonna care. But St. Cloud, well, if we can get home ice advantage, perfect, let's go for it. If we can't, screw it, just rest guys for the playoffs. I really don't care. Miami Western, I feel like that's a different story. Even if neither team can advance their position or ruin it for somebody else, they're still going to get up for it.
Yeah.
So it's a little bit of an interesting dynamic on how the coaches want to play it, but also how the players and the fans want it to be played out.
I mean, I can tell you that being around the programs for as long as I have, this is a game that everyone feels. It is essentially to put it in a way that other fans can understand, this is our Central Western rivalry of hockey. Since we don't play Central Michigan in hockey, we only play them in football and every other sport. But this is essentially that style of rivalry on the ice. And it's one that we want to use to propel ourselves into a good spot going into the playoffs. We want to be able to go into the playoffs on a win, on a sweep, build up a little bit of confidence going in, a little bit of swagger going in. But at the end of the day, we don't want to lose to Miami.
And that's kind of what makes this week interesting, because you have Denver CC.
Yep.
You have UMD St. Cloud. You have Western and Miami.
And it leaves
and
UNO, UND.
Yeah. So, me personally, I would like it to be UMD North Dakota, but I think the St. Cloud fans would also be like, well, why don't we get to play North Dakota? Like, we want that rivalry. But yeah, it's a very interesting and fun weekend in a sense. It just all depends on the rivalry.
And it's a very important weekend. Like, honestly, like this is one of the more important weekends of the entire season, really. Yes, it's the end of the season and some things might be in place, but I mean, we've seen the NCHC come down to the final weekend probably more often than not as far as who's taking home what positions. And granted, 1 and 2 might be tied up for sure, but I mean, we saw there could have been any changes from 3 to 6 last year, I think.
Oh yeah,
or at least 3 to 5. I don't know if UNO really had a chance at creeping up and stealing home ice from either of those teams, but 3 through 5 for sure could have been shuffled around and into some weird concoction of teams playing and earning home ice and not earning home ice. So it's every weekend's important.
I think it's probably the best weekend of the whole season because of the playoff jockeying. Going into the last weekend last year, UMD could have been as high as 3. We could have been 4. We ended up 5. Granted, that was okay. It was a little closer for me, but it was do I go up to Duluth or do I go to St. Cloud? Or do I not go at all because they're going to be in Kalamazoo? Like, how is this going to happen? So and this year it could be, is Miami going to be playing in Duluth as the 6th seed and potentially sweeping? Like, what's going to happen?
Yeah.
So that makes it for a fun year, and I think their schedule is kind of favorable for them. I don't think they're going to only win 7 games like they did last year.
No, I think they'll progress a little bit. I think most of their wins will probably come in the non-conference portion of the season,
Mm-hmm.
or they'll at least pick up more wins in their non-conference portion this year. Fun fact for those playing along at home, though, they have no home and home series, so every series is either fully away or at home. And they will open the regular season NCHC and close out the regular season all at home. So some of the more important weekends are on home ice for them. So potentially they could get off to a good start and hopefully not end the season on a good start or on a good note, because that's our weekend down there.
Yeah, and honestly, just because of knowing you, I would like them to end it on a bad note. Just because I do cheer for Western when we're not playing each other. But yeah, I think I'm guessing they'll probably get about 13 wins this year. Improved by about 11 to 13. So improved by 4 or 6, somewhere in there. That's my thought.
I think they could easily have 10 to 12 wins overall.
So we're not too far off.
No. I mean, granted, again, I'm giving them a lot of non-conference wins,
Mm-hmm.
but I could see them being in that 10 to 12 range, maybe even 14, but that's kind of pushing it, I think.
Yeah, I have 11 to 13. That's my thought, somewhere in there.
But either way, they will put some good hockey on the ice. They'll play some really good games. I don't know that they're going to get blown out a lot. I don't know that we're really going to see any more of 11 to 1 type games from them. But I wouldn't be surprised if they don't really manage that many wins. So
Yeah, and either way, they're going to put a good product on the ice. I saw that in all 4 games against UMD last year. Um, they're going to compete. They're going to play hard. They just might not get the W's that them or their fans want.
I think. So a couple side notes as we wrap up the episode here. I believe the NHL draft starts this Thursday. It'll be interesting to watch to see if there's some NCHC prospects getting drafted, or even guys on current rosters that are available to be drafted if they go anywhere. I'll keep an eye out for that for sure. 3 Ice, as we mentioned before, is something worth checking out and watching. There are some NCHC guys in that.
And I think the World Juniors are resuming. I don't think they've resumed yet, but they're going to resume at some point this summer. I think in August.
August 9th is what it looks like. 9th through the 20th.
Hey, so the day after my birthday. Belated birthday present for me.
So
World Junior Hockey.
So next month. We're about a month away from that. But yeah, that'll be interesting to see. We know there's going to be some NCHC guys in that. I believe the rosters are the same as they were in the fall or the winter, whatever you want to call that time of the year. I don't think they made any changes. I know they've announced next year's juniors rosters, I believe, or at least some of them. They're
at least the
invitees.
Tryout, yeah.
So,
but I do know, as much as I dislike the Gophers, the Wild did acquire a guy from the University of Minnesota in a trade for Kevin Fiala, and he will be on the World Juniors team for the United States. And good on him. He gets to play at home for his professional career, unless we decide to ship him off somewhere else.
And I think that's about it. I don't have much else. I don't know if you have anything else. Next episode, we'll probably play it by ear. Maybe we'll look at the draft and go over some of the drafted guys coming into or from the NCHC, whatever the case may be there.
Yeah, and that episode will be a couple weeks from now, as I will be at a work conference and on vacation.
Oh, look at you. All right, so there
I
will be
know.
no episode next Tuesday. And we'll work on a couple. We still have a couple other people that we're talking to about getting some things nailed down and dates. And there might be an announcement about an episode on a Sunday for one of those guests. So look out for that. I think that's an episode. There's only one thing left to say. Pucks on net, good things happen, like goal horns and fight songs. So until next episode, keep your sticks on the ice. Have a good one.